The smell of roasted turkey drifted through the Miller household, mingling with laughter and the clinking of silverware. The long mahogany table gleamed beneath the chandelier's soft glow, lined with golden plates, folded napkins, and glasses that shimmered like tiny lanterns. Everything looked perfect, everything except the quiet figure sitting at the end of the table. Ethan Miller, 26, stirred his mashed potatoes without taking a bite. Around him, his family buzzed with cheerful chatter, his elder brother Lucas bragging about his new promotion at the bank, his sister Sarah talking about her upcoming book launch, and his father, Richard Miller, dominating the conversation as always. Richard was the kind of man who filled every room he entered. His voice, his confidence, his certainty that he was always right. He'd built a business empire from the ground up and wore his success like armor. And tonight, as always, he used that armor to measure everyone else's worth, especially his youngest son's. So, Richard said, carving another slice of turkey, Lucas just got promoted to senior VP. Sarah's second book is being printed next month. He paused, his eyes sliding toward Ethan. And Ethan, tell us, son, what's new with you? The table quieted. Ethan swallowed, setting down his fork. I'm working at the clinic. Just part-time for now. Clinic, Richard repeated, brows furrowing. You mean the one downtown? Ethan nodded. Yeah, it's a free health center. I help out with patient data and patient data. Richard interrupted, his tone dipped in disdain. So, you're basically doing paperwork. Dad, Ethan started, but Richard held up a hand. Let me finish. You graduated 4 years ago. 4 years, Ethan. What do you have to show for it? No stable career, no savings, no plan. His voice grew louder. Meanwhile, your brother is earning 6 figures, and your sister just signed with a publisher. And you're, filing papers at a charity clinic. The words hit harder than expected. The warmth of the dining room suddenly felt suffocating. I'm trying to find my way, Ethan murmured. Your way, Richard scoffed. You've been trying since you were 18. Life doesn't reward trying, Ethan. It rewards doing. You're a smart kid, but you lack one thing: ambition. Ethan's mother, Laura, spoke softly from across the table. Richard, please, not tonight. It's Thanksgiving. Richard turned to her, shaking his head. No, Laura, he needs to hear this. I'm tired of watching him waste his life. He had every opportunity: school, money, support. And still he does nothing with it. Do you know what that makes him? Dad, that's enough, Sarah said quietly, but Richard ignored her. It makes him a disappointment. The word cracked the air like glass shattering. Forks paused midair, the candles flickered, and for a long moment no one spoke. Ethan stared at his plate, his chest tight. He'd been insulted before, teased for being the quiet one, the dreamer. But this was different. His father's voice wasn't angry, it was final. A verdict. Richard leaned back in his chair, satisfied that he'd said what needed to be said. Maybe this will wake you up. You're not a child anymore, Ethan. It's time you started acting like a man. Laura reached for Ethan's hand under the table, but he pulled away gently. He stood up, his chair scraping the wooden floor. Excuse me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Where are you going? Laura asked, worry in her eyes, just some air. As he walked toward the door, Richard called after him, running away again. That's your problem. You never face anything. Ethan didn't answer. He stepped outside into the cold night, the door closing softly behind him. The November air bit against his skin, sharp and bitter. The street was empty, save for the quiet hum of distant traffic and the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off the frost-covered pavement. Ethan shoved his hands in his coat pockets and began to walk, each step echoing softly against the silence. His father's words followed him like ghosts. No ambition, wasting your life, disappointment. He'd heard those words before, but tonight they sank deeper. Because part of him feared his father was right. He thought of his past, the failed engineering degree, the startup that crumbled under debt, the jobs that barely lasted months. Every failure had chipped away at his confidence until all that was left was a quiet man trying to convince himself he was still worth something. But he wasn't useless, he knew that. He worked late nights at the clinic, helping nurses, organizing patient records, sitting with people who had no one else. Sometimes, when an elderly patient thanked him for listening, or a mother smiled because her child was finally getting treatment, he felt a warmth that money couldn't buy. He didn't know where it would lead, but he knew it mattered. Yet how could he explain that to a man who only understood success in numbers and status? He walked until he reached the small park near his old high school, where the swings creaked in the wind. Sitting on a bench, he looked up at the faint stars scattered across the cloudy sky, his breath fogged in the cold air. For a moment he closed his eyes. He remembered being 12, showing his father a science fair project, a model of the human brain he'd made out of clay. His father had barely glanced at it before saying, "Medicine, that's for people who can't make real money." Ethan had laughed it off back then. But maybe that was the moment he'd stopped believing his dreams were worth chasing. Now, sitting in the freezing dark, he whispered to himself, "Maybe he's right. Maybe I really am a disappointment." But something in him, small, fragile, but alive, refused to die. A spark that whispered back, "Or maybe he's wrong." He sat there for a long time, watching his breath fade into the air until his phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his mom, "Please come home, sweetheart. Don't let his words break you. I love you." He smiled faintly through the ache in his chest. He wasn't ready to go home, not yet. But her message was enough to remind him that not all love comes with conditions. As he stood and began to walk again, snow started to fall slow, silent flakes gliding through the streetlight glow. He tilted his head up, letting them melt against his skin. Somewhere deep down, beneath the hurt and humiliation, something inside him began to harden not into hate, but into determination. One day, he thought, I'll show him I wasn't the disappointment he was for never seeing me. And with that silent promise, Ethan walked into the night, unaware that fate was already setting something extraordinary in motion, something that would make even Richard Miller eat his words. Following week after Thanksgiving passed in silence, Ethan hadn't spoken to his father since that night, and truthfully, he wasn't sure he wanted to. The house had gone back to its usual rhythm, laughter in the evenings, cheerful phone calls between his siblings and their father, but none of it included him. Ethan moved back to his small apartment downtown, a narrow one-room space that overlooked the dim alley behind the clinic where he worked. The radiator clanked in protest at the winter cold, and the cracked walls carried the faint scent of disinfectant from the clinic below. He didn't mind. It was quiet here, and he'd learned to live on quiet. Each morning, he walked to the Riverdale Community Health Center, a low-income clinic that served people who couldn't afford private care. His job wasn't glamorous, sorting patient files, organizing medications, sometimes helping nurses record basic data. But every face he met told a story, and those stories began to mend the parts of him his father had broken. There was Mrs. Alvarez, an old woman who brought her sick grandson every Thursday. She always called Ethan my angel. There was Tommy, a 9-year-old with asthma who drew him pictures of superheroes saying, "You're like one too, just without the cape." They didn't know how lost he felt. They just saw kindness, and sometimes that was enough. Still, the nights were heavy. When the clinic closed, Ethan often stayed behind, cleaning rooms or wiping down tables, not because he had to, but because he didn't want to go home to the emptiness waiting in his apartment. Sometimes, he caught his reflection in the dark window, tired eyes, a faint shadow of stubble, a man trying to find meaning in the fragments of his life. He'd whisper to himself, "You're not a disappointment. You're not." But some nights he didn't believe it. One evening in December, he was organizing supplies in the storage room when a deep voice spoke from the doorway. "You're here late again, Miller." Ethan turned to see Dr. Carter, the clinic's lead physician, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and tired eyes that still managed to look kind. Ethan smiled faintly, couldn't sleep. Dr. Carter stepped inside, crossing his arms. You've been volunteering here for almost a year now. You ever think about moving up? Maybe studying medicine formally? Ethan chuckled softly. Medicine, I don't think that's for me, Doc. My grades were good but not Harvard good, and med school costs a fortune. Carter leaned against the wall, studying him. You know what I've learned after 30 years in this business. Compassion can't be taught, and you've got more of it than most people who wear white coats around here. Ethan looked down, his throat tightening. That's kind of you to say, but I don't have the confidence for it. My dad thinks I've wasted my life already. The older man sighed. Fathers can be wrong, sometimes spectacularly wrong. Ethan smiled sadly. You don't know mine, Doctor. Carter shrugged. Maybe not, but I know this. There's a research fellowship at Harvard Medical. They're taking applications this month. It's designed for people like you, bright, unconventional, and driven by purpose, not ego. Ethan's heart skipped. Harvard, no way they'd pick me. Carter's voice softened. Don't decide for them. You've already decided too many things against yourself. Let someone else see what you can do. Ethan stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Do you really think I could get in? I wouldn't be wasting my breath if I didn't, Carter said with a gentle smile. Think about it, and Miller, he paused at the door. Don't let a man who can't see your light convince you that you don't have one. When he left, the room felt a little warmer. That night, Ethan sat at his tiny desk, staring at the Harvard Medical Fellowship website glowing on his laptop screen. His cursor hovered over the Apply Now button for nearly an hour. Each time he reached for it, he heard his father's voice again. You're a disappointment, no direction, no ambition. His stomach knotted. He closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Dad's right, he muttered. They'd laugh at me. But then his eyes fell on the small crayon drawing pinned to the wall, Tommy's superhero sketch, signed in shaky handwriting. For Ethan, the real hero. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he reopened the laptop. This time his hands didn't tremble. He filled out the form: name, background, volunteer work, motivation. When the section came that asked why should Harvard choose you, Ethan wrote from the heart, because I know what it's like to be powerless, to see people suffer when no one listens. I don't want to be someone who walks away. I want to be the one who stays. When he clicked submit, a quiet calm filled the room. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel like a failure. He felt alive. Days turned into weeks. December crept closer to Christmas, the city glittering with lights and fake snow on storefronts. Ethan didn't expect anything. He had applied half out of hope, half out of desperation. At the clinic, life went on as usual. He smiled at patients. Fixed computers carried boxes, but deep inside a tiny flame of anticipation burned. Then one evening, as he locked up the clinic, Dr. Carter called out from his office, Miller, you got a minute? Ethan walked in, brushing snow from his coat. What's up, Doc? Carter grinned, handing him an envelope. Mail came for you, looks official. The logo on the corner made Ethan's heart stop. Harvard Medical School. His hands shook as he tore it open. Inside was a simple letter. He read it once, then again, then once more, just to believe it. Dr. Carter watched his expression change: disbelief, then shock, then pure silent joy. Harvard called. Carter asked quietly. Ethan looked up, eyes glistening. They want me. They accepted me into the fellowship, full scholarship. They said they were impressed by my application and my volunteer work. The words came out broken by laughter and tears. Doctor, Carter clapped him on the shoulder, smiling. I told you, never let anyone decide your worth. Ethan's laughter turned into a choked sob. I wish my dad could see this. Maybe one day he will, Carter said, but for now, let you see it. Let you believe it. That night, as Ethan walked home under falling snow, he didn't feel the cold. He felt weightless. The same streets that had once echoed with his father's words now felt different. The same man who had walked away from that Thanksgiving table a disappointment was now walking towards something brighter. He stopped under a streetlight, the Harvard envelope still clutched in his hand, and whispered to himself, "This isn't revenge, it's redemption." And though the snow kept falling, for the first time in years, Ethan felt the warmth of hope in his chest, a spark that would soon become a fire no one could put out. Snow had blanketed the city in white silence. The streets glowed under the dull amber of streetlights.